I am Nyakallo Dlambulo, the director responsible for ferrous metals within the Industrial Development Division at the Department of Trade and Industry. My presentation today, I thought perhaps I should start by giving a little bit of context in terms of the difficult environment that we are operating on, both the global space and in the local front. The global economy is still uh, battling to recover with growth that is on a decelerated mode since 2018. We still have a persistent excess capacity, especially on the steel front, making our domestic market uncompetitive. There's a rise of trade tensions. There's also an emergence of recent trends that are associated with lower metal intensity, like your circular economy, the substitution of metals, climate change, increased digitalization, and of course the aging workforce. On the South African front, the steel and metal fabrication sector still remains a priority sector, which is integral to our country's industrialization path, with products and application and services that are used across the entire economy in the construction, general engineering, mining, rail, and capital equipment, as well as packaging. In 2017, the value added to the economy by both the basic iron and steel and non-ferrous metals was around 8 billion rands, and the sector employed around 53,000 people. The metal fabrication, capital, and other transport equipment value add in 2017 was around 60 billion rand, which employed around 267,000 people. The domestic manufacturing sector has been under severe pressure with its contribution to the country's GDP on a decline mode since the early 1980s from about 25% to just under 14% in 2018. We continue to see an import leakage of finished products, low economic activity, meaning that the order books are low, the demand is subdued. We have an increasing cost base in especially on the electricity, the rail, port logistics, and material costs, which are your administered prices. There is a problem in terms of access to affordable and quality scrap metal for our foundries and mini mills. We have aging plant machinery, a lack of investment as a result of a lack of investment, which obviously renders our sector uncompetitive. There's an increase in trade remedy measures against unfair trade and localization policies. This stagnating our already diminishing local production and threatening our our exports into the global economy. Well, as I'm standing here today, I'm actually representing the entire ferrous metal sector, including the metal casting sector where the foundries are. And in as government, in return for a sustainable, competitive, and inclusive economic growth and an environment that creates jobs, the government actually provides a conducive environment where we have policies in place. And these are just some of the ways that we have, as government, made sure that we put interventions in place for the metal casting industry and the related industries. In recognition of the value added by the casting sector in the local manufacturing sector, the Department of Trade and Industry in 2008 actually designated the foundry sector as a sector that is in distress and therefore established the National Foundry Technology Network, which is a support initiative to improve the competitiveness of the industry. This is the government and all the key stakeholders in the foundry sector identified areas for development to form a sustainable foundry sector as well as address the bottlenecks to competitiveness in the sector. And the following, not in any particular order, have been identified irrespective of circumstances. compliance to relevant environmental legislation, input material costs, which include energy, labor, and access to affordable scrap, lack of accreditation, aging plant equipment and a lack of investment, insufficient order books, skills development, monitoring and evaluation of products that are designated. Therefore, the National Foundry Technology Network actually focuses on the following areas to address the issues around competitiveness in the sector: accreditation and adherence to technical standards. This is where the program intervenes in the sector and supports programs like accreditation towards the quality management, your QMS, your ISOs, your pressure equipment directives, PEDs for those foundries that are doing valves, regulatory compliance in the waste and environmental management. We do assist foundries with their waste management, productivity and efficiency. In terms of energy efficiency and quality management, we do assist foundries to do facility layouts as well to make them more efficient. Human capital development, product development, and competitiveness enhancement programs. The program has actually been in existence for just over 10 years now, and it is around that time where we sit as government now and decide, look at the program, its impact in the entire industry, and right now there's a whole lot of programs that are going on. We are looking at mapping out the environmental landscape of the sector, ascertaining how many of the foundries we still have remaining in the sector. So please, when the NFTN comes through, please do open your doors, because we are actually trying to better our support as government for the foundry sector. Don't chase them away. Please do open your doors for them when they require certain information from you. Localization policy, that is local procurement by government. The policy is premised on maximizing and improving the local industry's sustainability and competitiveness. Therefore, compliance and enforcement remains integral in ensuring that this policy works. To date, the government has actually designated a few sectors and has also extended the scope of designation to close some of the gaps. There's a lot of them in total in government. There's about 24 designations, but pertaining to the steel and metal sector, we have the steel conveyance pipe circular, which was amended to also include pipe fittings. We have steel products and components for construction, which deals with your steel intensive products. Steel conveyance pipe circular, which we are in the process of amending so that actually ductile iron is excluded from the procurement of state, because we do not as a country have ductile iron. It's an import material. We have designation around steel power pylons, valve products and actuators, rail rolling stock, transformers, rail signaling, pump, medium voltage and associated equipment. We are aware that there has been issues around enforcement of designation, and as government, we are now going to ensure that we improve local content verification by strengthening our agencies like the South African Bureau of Standards, the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications, and ensure that enforcement of the current designation is done on a regular basis, facilitating local industry participation and collaboration with procuring entities in terms of product specification and development. We are also going to focus more on strengthening our partnerships with the Auditor General, whose actually audit mandate is on verification and enforcement measures. The other type of support that we do that we give to industry is on the trade measures, tariff and trade remedies. The Department of Trade and Industry, together with industry and ITEC, has been working to identify policy space for tariff support for products that are actually produced locally where we have the manufacturing capability and capacity. We do this by increasing tariffs where policy space allows us, and also increase duties to binding rates according to the WTO specifications. What government will be doing more rigorously and robustly are in the following areas. The Steel Committee has been gazetted in the last month and will reconvene in due course. We will continue monitoring the effectiveness and commitments on the current tariff and safeguard duties imposed. We will examine the policy space for additional support, especially for all the downstream products in the country where where there is not bound rates. We will ensure that we move it up to bound rates and bundle the other categories uh, to correct the misdeclarations, because we have a lot of imported goods that come into the country and get bundled under other because they don't have a specific category. We will continue with investigation of safeguard duties on downstream products, that is, products that are produced in the country. On illegal trade, we have had a surge of imported finished goods coming into the country, and most of them are incorrectly declared or under invoiced, resulting in less revenue for the government. We have had a surge of exports of scrap metal, and in August 2018 last year, in August last year, we SARS reference pricing system was developed with the DTI, SARS, labor, and government for the downstream products to address low-priced imports. To date, there's a risk engine which has about 18 products loaded into it, 18 tariff headings, and we urge industry to actually, if there is a specific product that is coming in below what it is manufactured in the country, please do let us know that so that we can actually list it with SARS. So the government will continue focusing on strengthening its partnership with SARS to combat custom fraud. There is currently an interagency working group on illicit trade that has been established to address illegal exports of scrap and imports of steel products, to tackle misdeclaration and under invoicing, and we will continue strengthening the reference price task team at SARS. And for, as I have already mentioned, that there is a surge of scrap metal that is exported out of the country, which is actually a key input material for most of our foundries and mini mills, thus making it actually difficult for the foundries to get scrap at an affordable price, and good quality scrap also gets exported out of our country. So the government will ensure that we finalize the scrap metal export implementation modalities with National Treasury, and we improve surveillance on illegal exports of scrap. On the energy front, I know a lot of people and a lot of businesses are actually under severe pressure in terms of energy costs. A framework of short-term intensive pricing was developed, which is the negotiated pricing agreement in support of economic growth and job retention in the productive sectors of the economy. The short-term pricing application process was approved by the Minister of Energy last year in June, and it is applicable for a period of 24 months. What we now need to deal with as government is to ensure that the implementation of the short-term pricing framework, the modalities around the implementation, in place. Also engage with the Department of Public Enterprises and the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy on a longer term pricing strategy post the 24 months, which is ending sometime next year in June. On industrial development funding, there is a steel downstream competitiveness fund, which is a discounted rate loan, which is administered by the Industrial Development Corporation on behalf of government. This fund was actually developed to ensure that we avert industry closure and loss of capabilities. The take-up to the fund has been quite slow, and therefore government has reviewed some of the qualifying criteria, and what needs to happen now is to ensure that we launch the new criteria. And the minister in the last month has also announced the launching of a metal fabrication support fund, details of which will be available in due course, which is it is a grant. It's actually a grant and not a loan, as such, to offer such a relief, much needed relief for the industry. And looking into opportunities for growth, the sub-Saharan African growth potential, we need to look at that as an industry because the growth is projected at 4% by 2024 in infrastructure investment, mining, oil and gas, energy, water, rail, agriculture, and growing services. We need to leverage on the ECIC on their local content requirement. The new mining charter also calls for 75% local content. We need to leverage on that. The automotive master plan 2035 also calls for about 60% of local content requirements. Those are growth opportunities for our sector. And the way forward, the Minister of Trade and Industry tabled the reimagined industrial strategy in Parliament, which calls for the development and implementation of plans across priority sectors, including steel. And the plans, the way the plans are action-oriented, they're implemented through collaborations, working with business, labor, and government, and they are actioned in stages so as to move with the requisite urgency that is needed to boost growth and economic development. And on the 20th of August last month, the Minister of Trade and Industry had a solution-focused interactive engagement with the entire steel industry, which is labor, business, and government, to convey government's intention to develop a steel and metal fabrication master plan. All the role players were urged to play a part in developing a coherent and a clear vision and contribute towards growth and competitiveness of the steel and metal fabrication value chains. Government made a call to all the role players to participate in this critical process and make commitment to ensure that the vision is realized. Submissions actually closed last week. It is envisaged that a draft working document should be in place by April 2020. And in closing, we want to affirm that the government appreciates the challenges that the local industry is faced with. We are committed to working with all the stakeholders to advance development, to implement measures aimed at restoring sustainability, competitiveness, and employment creation. And together with all the stakeholders, we continue to invest in local industry to improve competitiveness, continuously innovate, and grow to deepen local manufacturing capacities and capabilities. Thank you.